Thank you, gentlemen. That was round one of the questions. Now we're going to get right back into round two. So again, you have 2 minutes for each question. All right, Mr. Smith.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most important skill of being a good sheriff?
Well, right now, I think that one of the most important skills of being a good sheriff or a good deputy is communication skills. One of the things that the general public is telling me that there's a lack of communication. And by communication, I simply mean to communicate one with another. Right now, if we look at the department, I've talked to people that really don't know where they stand or what's going on. I talk to people that are in the street who say, I had a complaint. They came, they took the complaint. 2, 3, 4 weeks later, I haven't heard anything. Or I called and nobody returns my call. That shows me a need for being able to communicate. And that being able to communicate starts at the top. It starts with the sheriff himself. He not only needs to communicate with his people, but he needs to know how to communicate with the public, all the other government agencies that are around him, the other police agencies that are around him. Communication is the key. If we don't communicate, we fall and we fail.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Grisafi. Citizens' trust in the sheriff's office doing an excellent job in law enforcement in St. Mary Parish is very low. What would you do to change that thinking? Need me to read it again?
No,
Oh,
I'm good.
okay.
I'm good. First of all, nice answer to that, Mr. Smith. First of all, the sheriff department, honesty, integrity, trust, all of that comes in hand. What you have to do is, and we do it here at the city, is you got to be open. When somebody comes to visit you, you talk to them, you listen to the complaint. As small as it may be, it's important to them. I take every complaint. I listen to it. If I don't know the answer, I go down the rank and file, get the answer, and I deliver the message back. Whether we're in the right or we're in the wrong, at least if you could explain it, most reasonable people agree. As far as the sheriff department is concerned, I think the men and women in blue are honest. I think sometimes politics get in the way of trying to get the truth out, because in an election cycle, and all of a sudden, let's try to hide this, let's try to hide that. Facebook has been a nightmare. It exposes a lot of things. Sometimes you try to use it to your advantage, it ends up backfiring. I do not believe in politicizing people on Facebook. That's not something that's good for anybody. As far as the sheriff's concerned, I have an open door policy that I approve. You call the sheriff, the mayor right now, and come in, I'm taking you that day. You call the sheriff, I'm a representative of the people. That's why it's an elected official. If it's a rank and file, work your way up, policeman, try to get to the chief, that stops at the chief deputy. The reason this is an election is because they represent the people. So I'm going to communicate. You come with a problem, I'm your voice. I go down to the agency that you have a complaint about, I'm going to find out. I'll stand behind my guys 100% when they're right. When they're wrong, I'll go back to the person and say, hey, we're wrong. Then I'll go back down to rank and file and quietly and professionally try to explain that why we think we're wrong and how we can make improvements on that. I'm not going to throw somebody on the bus. I'm not going to keep anything from the public. I don't have a stake in the game. I'm elected to be your voice. I'm going to represent the people. We're going to deliver a professional organization that's going to make you proud.
All right, Mr. Anselm. How will you work to make St. Mary Parish deputies better suited to handle minor offenders in a way in which they may not return to crime? You want me to read that again?
Yes,
It's kind of worded wrongly down here. So let's see. How will you work to make St. Mary Parish deputies better suited to handle minor offenders in a way in which they might not return to crime?
Well, I think our deputies do a good job at handling complaints now. We have a very professional organization, professional service. I hear some of the other candidates talking about how they can bring professionalism to our office. I disagree. I think we have a professional office, a professional service that we provide to our community. We're very proud of that. When we go out to the public, we do address the complaints or problems that occur in our community. We work hard at public relations, working with our community. And I think our deputies do a fine job at doing these things and answering those questions and going back to people after they, citizens of the community, after they file complaints and follow up with them and deal with these things. I'm very proud of what we do, and I don't second guess any of that. We'll work hard to continue to improve that as we can. There's always room for improvement. I don't disagree with that. Anytime there's an incident that we deal with or we work through, we always look at it. How can we do things better? Absolutely. And we'll always strive to be the best at what we do.
All right, Mr. LeBeau, in your opinion, what are the two most important qualifications that chief deputy must possess?
The chief deputy must first and foremost be a good law enforcement officer. He must know the law. And he has to be fair. Anytime the public comes in to file a complaint, a lot of times it's going to wind up on the chief deputy's desk. And you need to have a chief deputy that's going to talk to the public and get to the bottom of what their complaint is. Deputies carry recorders. Been doing it for years. I introduced it back when I was running the patrol division. And what they do with these recorders is anytime they're dealing with the public, they make sure the recorders are on. That's to keep the deputy doing the right thing, along with the public knowing what they actually did at the scene. The chief deputy must be fair about it, not always take the deputy's side or always take the public's side. You have to look at both sides of that. I want someone as a chief deputy who knows law enforcement, inside and out, because you're going to be making law enforcement decisions, but they also need to have some type of administrative. The one thing I want to build with the Sheriff's Department are leaders. If everyone becomes a leader, you have less trouble with the deputies along the way. To make a leader, you have to take the time to start with your management of the department, make sure they're good leaders, and training the people underneath them to become the new supervisors. By getting good leadership out of everybody working at the Sheriff's Department, you would begin to get a more professional organization where everybody can solve the problems and those don't always fall to the chief deputy. But I expect him to be the leader of them, getting them down that road to be leaders. Because to be a leader, you have to train other people to be leaders. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Thornton, this is a long one, so I might have to read it twice, okay? All right, one of the big issues which face law enforcement all across the country is low wages. As part of that, many times deputies take on second jobs in order to make ends meet. Some second jobs require long hours of the deputies. Do you believe it is good practice to allow personnel to take on other duties, and do you think it could hamper their job performance with the Sheriff's Department?
Well, first of all, I think that pretty much anyone that comes into this career field, they come into it because of the love of the job. They don't come into it for the money. Now, granted, pay scales are low in any police department, but within that, yes, they do get secondary jobs. They do work details. Do I believe that details should be abolished or not allowed to work them? No, I do not, because at one point in time in my career, I was making more money on details than I was making at the sheriff's office, but I stayed with both. As long as the supervisor, the chief deputy, and the individual trying to work the details are both within the understanding of their job with the sheriff's office comes first, then they should be allowed to work their details and do the things they need to do with them. The second portion of that is, from a financial standpoint, they also need to realize that anytime they're working in detail, they're still basically on the department's nickel. The sheriff's department is still covering their insurance in most cases. So within that, there has to be a total and complete understanding between the individual working the detail, the chief deputy, and the supervisors as to all the duties of this extra detail to make sure that it doesn't hamper their normal job, their day-to-day operations, and get in the way. If it does, they got to quit working it. It's simple as that. The sheriff's job comes first, but also the family support comes first in their mind. And as a group and as a team together, we both need to work together to make sure that those things are best suited for both of us and best benefited for the individual and his family as well as the sheriff's office.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. That's the end of round two. Now we're going to switch to our final round. Mr. Smith, what would be the most immediate change, if any, that you would make in the department?
Well, right now, from personal observations and what people are telling me, one of the most immediate changes that we would have to make would be in uniform patrol. We need to bring uniform patrol up to staff. Right now, we have detectives and narcotic agents and boat people and other people working in a patrol to bring the force up to what it needs to be. I think that is very, very important because the uniform patrol is actually our first line of defense, our boots on the ground, if you will. And we have to, by putting the proper number of people there, we have the visibility that we need. Visibility is always a deterrent when it comes to crime. We need to bring everything back up to staff as far as the uniform patrol goes, and that would be one of the immediate things that we would have to do upon taking office.
All right, Mr. Grisafi. This year, St. Mary Parish ranks 46 in health factors in our state. If elected, what policies, systems, or environments will you propose to improve the culture of health within your agency and within the parish?
Right. First of all, some of the law enforcement are some of the best in shape people in the parish. So in-house, we should be in pretty good shape. But the sheriff does play a key role amongst the community with seniors, with the youth. We are going to be heavily involved. I do compliment the sheriff department. They do sponsor a lot of youth recreation. A lot of that's done through the campaign funds, not necessarily department money. We'll continue to do that. But to get more involved in the public overall, there's a lot of agencies, Fit Fund and Fabulous, doing a great job. The sheriff department and its resources can participate in that. Now, as a business guy, I'm thinking about health insurance, workman's comp, all of those type of things that need to be looked at. City went from a fully insured policy to self-insured. I know that the sheriff department right now runs self-insured policies, but there's a lot of safety programs within to reduce that amount of money being spent on health care. When you get in the sheriff department, you're looking for that day to retire. You want your benefits to continue. You want your retirement to be there. I think your best bet to make that happen is to elect an administrative guy like myself to protect them funds, to make sure that you have a wealth of finances available for you to enjoy your retirement.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Anselm, in your opinion, what are the two most important qualifications that candidates for this position should possess?
Well, I think some of those we have discussed already, obviously. I think you need to be a good listener. You need to be able to communicate with your staff, communicate with the community. And I think I possess that and do perform in that area well. I meet with my staff on a daily basis. I engage with them, whether it's meetings or just through a more leisurely visit through the office, checking in with them and communicate with them, seeing what's going on, see what's happening, what kind of investigations that we have going on, how we're progressing through those investigations, and where our goals and working to solving those crimes and fulfilling those obligations. So I think communications is very important. That's the foundation. So I think hard work and following communication and working hard and to make sure we deliver those services and provide the services and giving our staff the support and the stability to be able to do their job. So I think that's the things that are important, communications and working hard and giving the staff what they need to provide a professional service to our community.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. LeBeau, let's see. What distinguishes you from the other candidates?
One of the biggest things that distinguishes me is I worked for the Sheriff's Department for 34 years. When I left, I have a salary today. And I'm looking to get back to the Sheriff's Department because it's in my heart, it's in my blood, to get back and fix the things that I feel are wrong with the Sheriff's Department. And there are things that need to be corrected, but it always comes back to the trust. The trust is what it comes. I trust you, and I want you to trust me. Now, that can't always be done, but I will push to where I will be as transparent as possible so you can trust the deputies. The key to it is communication is a big part of that, but you do that by community policing. The officers who ride in the cars and don't stop and talk to the people on a regular enough basis. I want the deputies to get out the car, talk to the public, and get to know them. This is what I bring to the table is the leadership. I think it's the most important quality because I've worked for 4 sheriffs, because I've trained on a federal level, I've trained on a state level, and I've done it on a regional level. I trained a lot of police officers that are on the streets today. I feel that I can do a lot for the department in the leadership role because it's about making leaders of the deputies, as I said earlier. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Thornton. What is your realistic opinion on the gravity of the illegal drug problem in the parish, and how will you address it?
Actually, I think the drug problem in the parish is probably multitudes worse than the public perceives it. I think there's a lot of problems in the streets that are not being reported due to lack of trust and interest. I think there's a lot of problems in the street that are being addressed, but they're not being addressed fully. And I think the sheriff's department in itself is short-handed in the positions and the places they need to be able to actually really go out and get the drug dealers, the big guys, the smugglers. There's drugs coming through this parish on a daily basis in volumes, but they're not even being touched because we don't have the personnel to cover it. I think that's a very, very big issue. I think we need to ramp up the narcotics division. I think the narcotics division is there. I think they've done an excellent job, but I think they only scratched the surface. I think we need to get more drug training on the streets as far as daily operational deputies. Every deputy on the street should be able to make a drug case. Every deputy on the street should have just as much training as a narcotics agent. Every deputy on the street should be able to do the exact same thing a narcotic agent does. Let's face it, everybody sitting up here, except one, has said, we're all police officers. We have a job to do, and we're supposed to do it, and we're supposed to all know how to do it the same way. So with the drug problem, as you stated, yes, it's worse in my opinion, but I think it can be curtailed very easily with the right personnel and the amount of personnel we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you.